In 1949, the Chinese Civil War ended, and a new war began. The communists had won the mainland. The nationalists had lost it. And so, they fled. 2 million soldiers, officials, and refugees crossed the strait to Taiwan, dragging with them a broken government and a dream they refused to let die. They called themselves the Republic of China. They said this island was not the end, but the beginning of a comeback, a temporary exile, a stepping stone to reclaim the mainland. But exile has a way of hardening, and sometimes the temporary becomes permanent. Once on the island, Chiang Kai-shek began to build. Not a democracy, a fortress. Barbed wire lined the beaches. Checkpoints divided cities. Spy networks grew dense as roots. Every home had a flag. Every school had a portrait. Every child learned one story. This is not your home. This is a base. And one day, we will return. The KMT ruled not by consent, but by control. Martial law became the air. Fear became the currency. Taiwan was no longer just an island. It was a government in hiding, a nation pretending it had never fallen. The KMT didn't just impose martial law to crush dissent. They used it to shape reality. Only one China was allowed, and they were it. Maps erased the mainland's borders. Textbooks erased Taiwan's past. Only the Republic of China remained. History was rewritten. Memory was managed. Even the language on your tongue was dictated from above. To question this myth was not just rebellion. It was treason. Thousands were imprisoned. Some were executed. Most just disappeared. All so the story could survive. That Taiwan was not Taiwan. It was China, waiting to be restored. The regime didn't just control the present, it colonized the future. In classrooms, children pledged loyalty to a country they'd never seen. They recited poems about snowy northern rivers. Though they lived in the tropics, wall maps showed Taiwan as a tiny province. Mainland China dominated the frame. Media was tightly controlled. Only one party, one anthem, one version of the truth. Students practiced bayonet drills. Villagers memorized anti-communist slogans. The radio spoke in the voice of the state. The state spoke in the voice of the past. For 2 generations, children were taught they were Chinese, not by ancestry, but by decree. But behind the uniforms and slogans, questions lingered, whispers grew louder, and beneath the surface, a different identity was beginning to stir. To the outside world, Taiwan was free China, a Cold War ally.
Today, Taiwan's potential richness is being brought to fruition.
A capitalist success story.
Aluminum plants that process Malayan bauxite.
A front line against communism.
The island complexes of Kinmen, commonly known as
Chiang Kai-shek shook hands with presidents.
Statesman posed for news cameramen.
Taiwan held a seat at the UN.
Mr. Nixon,
Its diplomats toasted freedom.
Government of the United States and the people of the United States stand firmly with the government of the Republic of China and the people of the Republic of China
against the common danger which threatens free people around the world, the danger of communist imperial colonialism.
While its prisons filled with writers and students. The U.S. poured in weapons, economic aid, and silent approval, not because it believed in Taiwan's democracy, but because it needed Taiwan's position. a pawn in a larger game.
Mock-ups of the Red Coast and of Amoy Harbor helped to locate gun positions and other strategic installations. The battle against communism must be joined in Southeast Asia with strength and determination to achieve success there. Or the United States inevitably must surrender the Pacific and take up our defenses in our own shores.
A democracy in name, an autocracy in practice. For decades, Western powers looked the other way because free was a matter of perspective. But inside the island, the contradiction grew harder to ignore. You could buy a fridge, but not a free press. You could vote for your mayor, but not your president. The facade was cracking, and once cracks appear, light finds a way in.
China was once half a world away, her people and her problems of little concern to us. But today, China is next door by clipper plane. And in our shrinking, warring world, what happens to China, in some measure, happens to us.
In 1971, the world turned the page. The United Nations voted to recognize the People's Republic of China. And the Republic of China, Chiang Kai-shek's government, was expelled. Overnight, Taiwan lost its seat, its name, its stage.
In view of the frenzy and the irrational manners that has been exhibited in this hall, the delegation of the Republic of China has now decided not to take part to any further proceedings of this General Assembly.
Today's vote has demonstrated the great the role that the world recognizes to the people of China, its colossal strength on the side of the fight for people's freedom, the will of all the peoples, peace-loving peoples, and this vote has confirmed the great truth that the United Nations needs China, that without its contribution, which is essential, it is unable to resolve any of the important problems confronting it.
The United Nations today crossed a very dangerous bridge, and that's the question of expulsion. And time will tell. My country took a good deal of abuse in there by some intemperate people, and this is fine. There was lots of very noble opposition to our position. But in calm reflection, I think we're going to recognize that there's been a very serious mistake. I know it's very fashionable in there to lord it over the United States. But my point isn't the fact that we lost. My point is that the United Nations lost.
For Chiang, it was more than politics. It was humiliation. A founding member of the UN, erased by the very order he helped build. In Taipei, the newspapers called it injustice. But behind closed doors, there was only rage and disbelief. To the world, China now meant Beijing. And the island once called Free China found itself alone, unrecognized and undefined. The myth of return had cracked. And through that crack, another Taiwan began to emerge. Isolation forced a reckoning. If the world no longer believed in the Republic of China, who were they ruling, really? Writers began to remember what had been erased. Teachers whispered truths long forbidden. The younger generation no longer dreamed of the Yangtze or Nanjing. Their horizon was the Pacific, their home, this island. The myth that had justified control was fading, and in its place, the idea of Taiwan was quietly, stubbornly being born. After Chiang Kai-shek's death, his son, Chiang Ching-kuo, faced a truth his father never could. The war for China was over. To redefine its place in the world, Taiwan had to pivot. He opened the island's economy, He mobilized engineers. He helped establish the Industrial Technology Research Institute, ITRI, a place where science met statecraft. And in the hum of factories and labs, a different kind of future took root. From those labs would come inventions, industries, and TSMC, proof that the island could shape its own tomorrow. Power shifted, from generals to technocrats, from slogans to circuits. Legitimacy was no longer claimed through maps of China, but earned through the work of its own people. Out of exile, a nation began to reinvent itself. The myth of return had faded, but the question of identity remained. Were they Chinese, Taiwanese, both, neither? Politics could not answer it. Borders could not contain it, because identity, like language, like land, is lived. It grows in the choices people make, the stories they tell, the futures they dare to imagine. And on this island, after decades of silence, indoctrination, and fear, people had begun to speak. Not as relics of a broken republic, but as authors of something new. And though the world still debated Taiwan's status, on the island itself, a different question echoed louder. What does it mean to be free? Next time, the island awakens. After decades of silence, the people of Taiwan begin to speak, and the world begins to listen.